The first one is database testing, and second one is ETL testing itself. In detail, so this class will be on an outline of what all categories we have, what is the scope of ETL testing, where we begin and where we end. So this will be class 1. Okay. In the upcoming classes, each topic will be taken and discussed in great detail. Okay.
Okay.
So, generally, the general testing concepts like software testing life cycle in general, or categories of testing. So generally testing involves how many categories? So testing involves 4 categories of testings. Okay. This is a regular industry practice. The first testing is a preliminary testing. So these are the testing categories which are applicable for ETL testing. So these categories are in general applicable to all kind of testings, but yeah, in ETL testing these are the tests we carry out, and the order I am writing is the order in which we carry out these tests. So these are the 4 testing categories that we do, 4 test matrices which we prepare and then perform testing on ETL solution. So the ETL solution. So I will tell you each of these testing. So these are the 4 testing categories in any industry we perform as part of ETL testing. When an ETL solution is designed and is delivered to QA team for carry out testing, then we prepare test matrix. Test matrix for each of this testing category, for each of these 4 testing categories, and then we pass through the test matrix and then we finish our testing. Okay, so I will give you a little brief what is the significance of this testing and what is the scope of the testing categories. The smoke and sanity testing is preliminary testing that we do to ensure that the provided solution is in working condition. Whether it is working correctly or not is a secondary question. So the first test we do is whether the given solution is working or not, and it is fitting in our environment or not, it is supporting the environment or not. So this is a smoke test which we do before we actually begin with any of the testing. The first, if we are unable to access the package, or if we are unable to install the package, or if we are unable to unpack the package which is given to us, then right away we give it back to the development team saying that we couldn't retrieve the data. I mean, we couldn't retrieve the solution. So we carry out the smoke testing. Then majority smoke testing will be passed, then we come with the system testing. This system testing is where we actually have to understand the domain. Very less of technology, more of domain, and we have to understand what we have to think ourselves as an end user, and then assume how an end user gonna look at this application, what would be his expectations, what are the business rules, are those business rules all implemented in a proper way, and if everything is functioning properly according to the expectations of the end user, and the end user is comfortable with using this package, I mean, we have to keep him in view and then write test cases accordingly for system testing. So here we will completely test the in and out of the solution. If we have access to code, then we do white box. If we don't have, then we do black box. So actually, after system testing, then we do another testing that is called volume or load testing. This can be positioned later at the last phase of the testing, or can be avoided, or will be done immediately after system testing. This is to test the performance of the application. Okay, I have a SLA that my package should be able to deliver the solution to the next application, maybe a file or a service call to the next application in less than 5 seconds, or generate a file in 5 minutes. Is it happening or not? Okay, then is it scalable or not? Today I have 10 MB of data passing to this application, but tomorrow in future I may have 1 GB of data passing to this application. Will this support? Or at a peak season, for example, my daily transaction at a counter is 1,000 transactions per day. But on festival seasons or on a special sale season, I may have more than maybe 10,000 or a lakh transaction volume. Will it support on the peaks environments? So we test out the explicit scenarios that can possible, and then we see whether the system is able to still sustain that load or not. And this is a system or volume testing that we immediately perform after system testing is passed. This is like a third category of testing. Then we proceed to regression testing. So this regression testing is applicable only when we are doing a CR, change request, or any enhancement. If a system is developed for the first time, then we will not have this regression testing. So regression testing is to ensure that the change or the enhancement which is implemented recently is not breaking anything which is already there as part of the application. Okay, so this regression testing is optional is because if we are developing something new, then there is nothing that we are breaking which is already there. Is it because everything is new? So we don't do regression testing. Regression testing is to ensure that the existing functionality is not tampered. Yeah, that is about the regression testing. And then we do the last final phase of testing, that is integration testing, where we see that the application which is developed is fitting perfectly with all the other applications. So this can also be optional if the application which is developed is the only application which is which will be independently working at the client location, then we will not have integration testing. Just install it on the client system and forget about it. But if this is going to be part of multiple applications, then we will do integration testing, whether it is able to communicate with the other systems which this is going to be part of properly or not. This integration testing is very, very important in ETL testing. So this will be taken lightly in other testings like web testing or mobile testing. But for ETL testing, this is very important, because ETL solution will never be an independent solution. It will be always dependent on other applications. The scope of a tester will limit only to the ETL solution, testing an ETL solution, but the scope of a ETL solution will be dependent on the other applications. Okay, so this integration testing becomes very important for ETL testing. Okay, actually all of this, even the load and volume testing is also very important for ETL testing. Smoke testing is also very important, because mostly, but yeah, 10 to 15% of the testing packages will fail in smoke test itself. Okay, these are the 4 testing. Then we'll have a software development life cycle. Yeah, that can be studied over internet. Then we'll have defect life cycle. So we have tools. So the things which I am telling now are in general to the testing technologies. That will have different tracking tools, defect life cycle. Then we raise it. We prepare test document, defect document, all that stuff. Okay, fine. So now let's get back to ETL testing, very specifically ETL. So now I'll be talking about the less of testing and more of the technology of ETL. Okay. So to tell you about ETL, I have to go a level above. I have to go a level above of ETL and should explain what is business intelligence. Because ETL is, if business intelligence is parent, then ETL is child. So this is business intelligence. I have to discuss about business intelligence. Business intelligence technology is now part of every organization, whether it is the small or medium or large scale. So nowadays this has become a crucial department or a vertical for every organization. It consists of integration services, reporting, business intelligence comprises of these three subsections, namely integration services, integration, reporting, and analysis. Okay, this integration is nothing but ETL. So why do we have this technology in place for any organization? What is the significance of business intelligence? Okay, so for any organization, irrespective of whatever the business they are in, data is very crucial for them. Yeah, the day-to-day transactions or the information about the organization is everything matters which need to be organized and then which should be able to be retrieved whenever it is needed. Having two main goals. Having these two primary goals, organize with these two primary goals, organize and retrieve, we have evolved to a technology called business intelligence. Okay, so what do we organize? Okay, in any typical organization, the data which they collect as part of their day-to-day activities, transactions, so the data would be gathered at multiple locations in multiple forms. Agree? So the data can be collected at as low, as basic as in Excel sheets or text files to as advanced as an ERP system. Okay. So for example, if we take retail chain like KFC, so there could be stores which are set up in metros with good infrastructure. So they will be having good software facilities. So the data might be stored in a database and RDBMS like Oracle or SQL Server. There could be stores which are set in rural areas, remote villages as takeaway counters with not so much heavy infrastructure, but still they perform business there. So in such typical locations, the data might be collected in Excel sheets or in any other flat form, flat files. irrespective of wherever data is, maybe so the same KFC center at the head office may be having an ERP system. ERP like SAP or JD. So PeopleSoft. So we may have an ERP at the head office. Irrespective of where we have the data, all this data should be unified, should be normalized and brought to a single point, a single location. So the agenda, the goal is any organization should have only one source of truth, a single source of truth. If we have to achieve that, all of our data, irrespective of where they are, should be collected and gathered at one location, at one point. Okay? It's because my final reports should not say that for a year I have 30% profit from one system and from another system I have 35% profit. The same organizations, there shouldn't be two systems giving two different numbers, right? You agree? So we should have only one single source of truth for an entire organization. But is it possible to have data collected only at one point? No, it is not possible in practical scenario. In practical working business solutioning, it is not possible to collect all of your data into one single point, one single source. Data at different places. Then what we do, we collect that data and then get to a single source, which can be called as data center. Your data center, a single database, also called operational data center, ODC, anything, you name it. But the agenda is to have only one single source of truth. So you establish, generally an organization will establish one central system with an RDBMS on it, maybe SQL Server or Oracle or any RDBMS database on it, and then will gather the data at multiple locations into that source of truth. So this is where integration services will come into picture. This is where integration services will come into picture. Now it is a time to elaborate ETL. ETL stands for extract, transform and load. So we extract data from various sources with different formats, different sizes, different contents. We don't actually bother about what the data it is. We are interested only in metadata. We are interested only in the format, the file size, the file, the number of columns it will have, how it is separated. If it is RDBMS, what RDBMS it is, whether it is Oracle or SQL or MySQL or any free databases. So we care about the metadata, data of data, and then we do extraction of data. Then we do transformations. Once we extract data, we do transformations. Transformations are like if we need any additional logics to be built in while we are getting the data. So sometimes we may have to club data from one file with another file, or sometimes we may have to split data. We may have to extract only the meaningful portion of the data, or we may have to multiply something while we getting data, like exchange rates. Yeah, so we do some transformations also. While we don't blankly extract data and load it into the final system, we do some transformations, some operations, business operations. So those are called transformations. And finally, once we're done with the transformations, we load data. Load data where? To our central system. This is again RDBMS. Maybe SQL Server or Oracle or anything. We load it finally. So this is ETL, the first part of your business intelligence technology. Okay, once we have the data within the central system, what could be the next need? The next need is representing the data, which is called reporting, also called reporting. So see here this diagram where it explains this business intelligence very clearly and neatly. So see the scope of ETL, extract, transform, load. So we will have data at multiple locations. Then so this to our RDB, this is ERP, there could be some files. Then we remember one thing, in my earlier diagram I showed you that the data is extracted and taken directly into a central system, an RDBMS. Okay, but in a practical industry it is not done directly. The loading will first happen to a staging area. So the staging area is the exact replica of what the data you have here in the systems. So we will not do much transformations. We will do plain load, extraction and loading. More like we take the data from all different portions and then dump it into one area without much caring about what it is, what is there in it. Okay. So once we have data in the staging, then we do some cleaning activities, transformations, segregation, and all that happens, and then finally we take that data to reporting database. So again, ETL operations happens here too. So the two level of ETL operations takes place. One is extracting from multiple sources and loading it into the staging area. Then again extracting from staging area, loading it into central database. And we do transformations in between. This is the scope of ETL, which is the primary vertical of business intelligence technology. Once we are done with ETL, the next need comes is, so now we have established a single source of truth for the entire organization. From here we will do the next thing, which is reporting. We'll have different reporting tools in market. We do representation of data. Then representation. So eventually what happens is when we are representing the data over time, it so happens that the data on your central repository will increase enormously, and the runtime of your reports will come down. The report, which generally takes 1 or 2 minutes to retrieve data and show, like year-on-year sales with revenue and profits, which takes generally 1 or 2 minutes over years, may take more than that time. So then we will have analytical services. We build cube out of them, out of central database, aggregated cubes, and which will enhance the speed, performance, the way the data is stored and retrieved. Then again we will represent it to the end user. The goal is to deliver the data of an organization to the end user so that he will take decisions, so that he will study his company performance, be able to give competition, sustain in market. So the second two parts of business intelligence are not of interest now for this course, reporting or analysis. most of the industry practices of business intelligence technology, most of the industry practices is limited only to integration services and then reporting services. They will have ETL in place and then they have reporting tools in place. A few organizations which have infrastructure will go for analysis services too. These two are not of scope for this course. But yeah, to understand ETL, we need to understand business intelligence technology on an overview so that we know where this ETL fits in. Okay. So I told you ETL testing is not a tool, is a technology. But ETL is not. ETL is a tool, though it is process, but tools perform ETL. We will come back to our we will come back to the beginning of our course. So where I told you that ETL testing is done in two phases, two mostly independent and at some point dependent phases of testing, that is the database testing and ETL testing. Okay, so we are getting back to this now. I hope I have made the business intelligence technology concept clear. This diagram will help in understanding it better. So for carrying ETL testing at 2 level, have to have database testing done first before we come to ETL testing. Okay. So for doing database testing, what we need? We need SQL knowledge. And database concepts. We need database concepts and SQL knowledge for carrying out database testing. Yeah, there are some tips and hacks and techniques for carrying out better testing that I will be sharing in upcoming classes. But yeah, the primary understanding of SQL language and database concepts is very important for carrying it out database testing. But we are talking about ETL testing. Why do we have to learn database testing? ETL testing is not complete without database testing. Okay. So this database testing is not only done as part of ETL testing. This can be done as part of web application testing or any other application testing, cube testing or report testing. In business intelligence technology, in general, database testing is very, very important. Then we do ETL testing. For ETL testing, we need to understand some ETL tools. Some of the ETL tools. As part of this training, I will be using SSIS, which is Microsoft Business Intelligence SQL Server Integration Services tool. So SSIS. SQL Server is an RDBMS. So it comes with SSIS, it is part of MSBI. Integration services, or we have Informatica. Or we have Pentaho. PDI, Pentaho Data Integration. Or we have Ab Initio. Or we have OBI, BIDW, Oracle Business Intelligence. This is Microsoft Business Intelligence, MSBI SSIS. Microsoft Business Intelligence SQL Server, MS, BI, SSIS. That's what I will be using. I'll be using for testing. So out of these three, which is free and which is widely used? Informatica is widely used across industry for ETL operations. 60% of ETL market is in the hands of Informatica. It has a very good support for free databases and large-scale databases too. 40% of the industry is in the hands of MSBI, Microsoft Business Intelligence. Microsoft Business Intelligence is free. That's the biggest winning point for MSBI. Microsoft Business Intelligence has all three: integration services, reporting services, and analysis services, which I discussed as part of Business Intelligence. These are all three. So out of all three, we will be using SSIS, which is relevant to our ETL testing. So this is very intuitive, very what you say, which will be very supportive for carrying out ETL testing. Which can be discussed as part of this ETL testing program. Utilized, which can be used as part of this ETL testing. So MSBI, SSIS will be used. But what is majoritarily being used in industry, which is, if I have to position, the number one will go to Informatica, then two will go to MSBI, then three Pentaho, OBI, Ab Initio, all these tools. So here you need a tool understanding also. Without tool understanding, the second phase, ETL testing, is not easy. It is possible. It is not a mandate that you have to know a tool to carry out ETL testing, is because it is developer duty. So I will tell you the success of a ETL tester. The success of ETL tester will lie in not in understanding the ETL tool. No. If you understand ETL tool completely, maybe your developer has used any one of these tools, so you thought of learning the tool and you have excelled in the tool, that doesn't mean that you will become an effective ETL tester. No. The success of ETL tester lies in domain understanding. More than technology, as a matter of fact, for testing any application, maybe not only ETL testing, a tester should have more domain understanding, more end user understanding, more business rules understanding. So you have to get more and more data, form as many cases as possible, and run through all the cases with all possible data combinations, and then prove that you have bugs. System has bugs. There lies it. So you have to more understand the domain. But saying that, is it the only thing which is needed to understand for doing ETL testing? No. Tool understanding is also required, but how much? To be able to run the ETL solution, ETL solution which is given for a tester, he should be able to run that ETL solution using the tool with which the solution was developed. Okay, so that understanding can be obtained even from the developer, or in the organization itself. There will be say a workshop, 2 or 3 days workshop to understand the tool, how to use the tool to run the solution, to analyze the solution, to debug it. Nothing more than that. You don't have to understand the entire technology of the tool. You have to understand more of a tester should understand more of the domain to carry out ETL testing. So as part of this course, I will be giving an outline of SSIS, the SQL Server Integration Services tool. I will take a session to make it understandable. Then we'll demonstrate how ETL solution will be tested using SSIS. So this is a scope of testing, so we will be doing all the testings which are discussed here uh, on both the things, in both the phases. Then each will be discussed in great detail with supportive queries and solutions. Now, yeah, so this is pretty much the introduction for ETL testing. So what is ETL testing? How many type of testings we do? Where does ETL comes from? It comes from business intelligence. So what is business intelligence? What we have to have as a prerequisite for doing for being a ETL tester, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So now, to begin the course, we will go to the next part of the course.
When it comes to big data, kind of volume of data,
Yeah.
which tool supports this kind of load? I mean,
Ab initio.
Okay.
Ab initio is one of the best ETL tool which is available in the market, which is very good at handling huge volumes of data. Huge.
So, okay.
Huge, like a giant retail store like Walmart or Tesco.
Uh, okay. Thanks, no.
Database testing. Okay. So what is a database? Representation of data in two-dimensional. So we have data organized in rows and columns. Along with data, we have objects uh, like stored procedures or functions or views. Primarily, database is organized. So this database, typically in any organization, is maintained in two formats. The database is maintained in two formats. One is online transactional processing. Online analytical processing. These are the only two formats in which a database is organized in any of the organization. Now the third format is coming up, which is big data. Little untraditional, but yeah, traditionally most of the companies organize the data in these two formats: OLTP, OLAP. So we have to understand what these two are and what is the scope of these two, so that we can test databases effectively. Okay, so now to understand the difference between these two, first you have to understand a little background of these two, what is the need and how they evolved. Okay, so to carry out a business, mainly we need simplified tables. So in a database, at the end of the day, all the data will be stored in tables, in rows and column formats. Okay, so to carry out a business at the POS level, point of sale, point of transaction, where the low level transaction happens, where we interact with the consumer, there the way in which a transaction is processed, I mean retrieved or stored, generated, should be very quick, shouldn't be time consuming. Okay, so there our database structure should be very simplified and very finite, so that the transactions will not be delayed. Okay, so for that we will have, what we need is online transactional processing model of database. So what happens in this model of database is we will have many number of tables, multiple number of tables for each operations. So for example, to explain this in detail, we have to take an example. Okay, let's say that assume that we are dealing with a supermarket. Okay, supermarket where the transaction happens. Where the transaction happens in supermarket? Point of sale, POS or a till. There, when a transaction is being generated, what all information we store? So first information that we store is the cash counter number, POS number, cashier number, and the date and time, the primary information as respect of the store. So for this we will have one table, one small table, and then we will have table 2, another table for holding the transaction data. So what are the items are purchased at a header level. Okay, not an header level right now at the moment. So this table will have in detail. So like a customer has come up with 10 items. So for 10 items, 10 transactions are generated, and these 10 transactions are stored in a table. So this will have detailed data like the transaction, the product name, number, quantity, amount, all that information. Then I will have an header transaction. So where I will have an amount, the amount which I have to, which the consumer has to pay, by what means he has paid that amount, maybe card or cash, or if it is card, the card number and all the details. If it is through meal pass, then the denominations and the number. So this will be the header information. The payment information will be stored again in another table. And then if he has a loyalty program, if he is enrolled for the loyalty program, then the membership number and then the points earned, all that in another table. And then if he if there are some special promotions which are applied or a seasonal sale is there, so then that information another table. So what I am doing here, what I am doing in this model, OLTP model, so I am having as many tables as possible for each and every need, because that will simplify insertion process, because that is where the data is generated. So that is a point, the last end point of my business model is where my data will get generated. Okay, the number of transactions. So that to store that data, I should have as much simplified tables as I can have, so that the insertions will not get delayed. Immediate the transactions are speedily done, very effectively done. So this is called OLTP, where the tables are normalized. So for this you have to understand the normalization concept. So there are different level of normalizations which we take help of to create an OLTP, online transactional database. So the agenda is to have as many simplified tables as we can have, so that the insertions or updations or deletions happens quickly. A transaction is generated. So if a transaction is generated, means the data is inserted into our database. So insertion becomes fast. Now I say a smaller size product, but I will say no, I will not pick smaller, I will pick a large size product. Immediately the transaction has to be updated. Or if I say no, I will not take that item, the transaction has to be dropped. So to support these three operations, only to support these three operations, insertions, updations and deletions, we have tiny tables so that the operations will be fast. So we have OLTP, online transaction processing. So see here, this database model is effective only for carrying out transactions. So it is named as transaction process, only for carrying transaction process. Okay, by the end of the day, I am done with all my transactions. All the transactions are collected. Now what I have to do? I have to have them in a central system, right? Central system, so that I can do reporting, so that I can query out retrieve data and represent to my business users so that they will analyze the sales trend, take decisions, plan inventory or future promotions. All that stuff they can plan only when they can retrieve the data. But is retrieving directly from this online transactional processing table good? No, because here we have multiple tables having the same category of data in different tables. If we have to gather, if we have to collect data, we have to join all these tables, which is very costly in terms of technology. So selection becomes very very problematic, very time consuming if we have to retrieve data from these normalized tables. So we have OLAP in place, online analytical processing, which is also called data warehouse. So we have this in place. So what does it say? It say club all those tables which are of similar category and have only one table with maximum number of columns. So in the example which I discussed, the typical sale transaction which happens at POS, point of sale, and I will have only one table which is called sales, and I'll have multiple columns to have all this data in one table. So that is OLAP. So let's see. So I think I have laid the difference, clearly laid the difference between OLTP and OLAP. OLTP is to support front-end operations. If you take a banking sector, so the banking, you go to a ATM, you withdraw money, so they shouldn't take much time. So there should be simplified tables where it should be able to show the card number, the amount available, to verify your PIN and all that stuff. So as soon as you swipe, immediately a call has to be made, immediately that transfer card should be verified, retrieved data, card is verified, then amount is retrieved, so you have to update the amount, how much ever you withdraw, so that amount should be updated, and then if there are any insertion has to be made. So all these insertion substitutions should happen very quickly. If it has to have, if they have to happen quickly, then I have to have small tables, not big tables. If I have big tables, then these three main operations, insertions, updations, and deletions, will get slow. So I'll have an OLTP to support front-end operations in a banking sector. Front-end operations like teller operations or ATM operations, automatic teller or manual teller. Whatever. So I'll have an OLAP at the front end. Then at the back end, at the core, at the center of the organization, I will have an OLAP, a data warehouse, where I will have less number of tables and more number of columns to collect the maximum possible data. Okay. Let's get to the difference of these two, like users. So users I will have front-end operations like clerk in a non-IT organization, and IT organizations are the professionals like ticket, IT help ticket tracking tool. So where you create tickets, you update tickets, you delete tickets, all that you do, right? So there you will have an OLTP front end. But at the back end, if I have to team lead or supervisor want to know how many tickets are being closed in the on a day-to-day basis, how many are open, what is the close volume, is customer being satisfied, what is the count, what is the feedback, how many were left not open last week, how many tickets were were pending for a very long time, which are open, closed but again open. So this kind of knowledge information to retrieve, which is not day-to-day operation. This is done to make decisions, to take decisions. So here the knowledge workers will come in place. Business users, function, day-to-day operations and decision support. So again falls into the same thing. DB design, application oriented, and so application. So mainly applications like content applications. The example I took, ticketing desk. So a website will be there. So so all these tables will be aligned so that the website transaction is smooth. In banking operation, ATM. So as the application is designed for the ATM, the tables will also be aligned according to it. But whereas in OLAP, it is not. It is like how a user want to retrieve. So most of the decisions happens where. Okay, so my most of the decisions is happening on recruiting. Like if I am running a consultancy, providing manpower, so I'll be more interested on recruiting people with skill, expertise, experts, and then mobilizing them, maintaining the bench, sending them to vendor and shuffling them, replacing them, all that. So more than finance, I'll be more concentrated on human resources. So that's my subject. So I will plan, I will design my OLAP into that. If it is a financial like Barclay or Wells Fargo, financial organization, most of my analysis will be on the finance. So yeah, so OLAP will be designed according to that. Data. So here it should be always latest. It has to be real time, not near to real time. Okay, OLTP. In a bank ATM transaction, it should be always reflecting the latest balance, right? If a ticketing tool, if a ticket is closed, immediately it should reflect. If it is not, then the end user, the IT professional will be spending say more time on the ticket. Whereas OLAP, not very real time, because business users may take decision maybe at the end of the day or at the end of the month, or end of the week, week on week sales or month on month sales. So sometimes there could be need of OL also to be real time, but majority OLAP will never be real time. It will be something near to real time, but yeah, historical data will be maintained in it. Historical data, again, this has to be briefly understood. So if I have an organization being run for a very long time, maybe 15 years since the data is established, I will have all the data in my OLAP, all 15 years of data in OLAP, but not in OLTP. OLTP may have at max last 1 year or 2 years data, or maybe sometimes 3 months data only. It will have limited data, but most accurate point in time data, up-to-date data. Whereas OLAP will have all the data, entire data, may not be latest. Latest means that it shouldn't be like 1 year old. It can be at max a week or a day old. But it should also be updated on regular intervals. Okay, so this is where most of the packages are developed. ETL packages are developed, taking data from OLTP to OLAP on regular intervals. This is where the packages are built, which will run ETL solutions, which will run overnight or fortnightly. So to load data from OLTP to OLAP. This is not the only way that ETL will run. ETL will run also to get data to OLTP also. So OLTP also to get data, ETL will run and then fetch data. Sometimes records will be directly inserted into OLTP database from the front-end application or by the user, end user, or sometimes data will be fetched from files into OLTP. But to OLAP, always and only ETL will load data. Only ETL will load data into OLAP. It is not always true for OLTP. Usage, repetitive. It should be highly integrated and high usability. It should be highly available. This is ad hoc. Whenever the need raises, then we will go and do knowledge work on OLAP, the data warehouse. So this data warehouse OLAP is also called, the first part of this class I told you about a data center, data mart, or ODC, operational data center. So this is that is all is OLAP. So the operations we do are not on a regular intervals. But the ETL which loads OLAP is not ad hoc. It happens on a fixed interval, daily or weekly or hourly. So data will be loaded into OLAP. But the consumption of OLAP is whenever a business need arises, because business needs keeps changing. The end user today, he might be analyzing the competition, how I am performing in the market, and tomorrow he might be focusing on cost cutting of an organization. Then he will be only interested in looking at the company data alone. Okay, so this needs changes, so the operations also will run exactly as the need changes. Access. So this will have read write. So see, I told you, right, so this OLTP is primarily designed for insertions, updations and deletions. Okay, so primarily designed. So of course we have to do updations and deletions. First you have to read them, right? So we do read operations also, then write. So we will have a most simplified table so that the operations will be fast. Here updations are very rarely done, mostly insertions. Insertions also on a regular intervals, planned intervals like once in a day or once in a week. But reading, scans, like selections. Selections are very frequent. Selections are very frequent and very rapid. But insertions and updations are very slow. Deletions almost negligible. You won't delete anything from OLAP. Very rarely, unless until you are doing some scam, you don't delete anything from OLAP. If you ever have to delete, then you will logically delete them. You say logically delete, maybe you will record, you will mark that record as deleted, maybe a flag set as 1 or 0. That this record is deleted, it is not effective, or this is record is inactive. But you will not perform deletion operations at all on an OLAP. Updations, yeah, you will do, but at the same time you will also store the previous value in most of the models when an updation happens. So it is the thing is in OLAP the state of data will very rarely change. So that's why we will have huge tables. If it happens very frequently, then huge tables will screw insertions, updations and deletes. Huge tables are beneficial only for selections. That's why we wrote a lot of scans. A lot of selections are supported by OLAP. We'll do complex queries here, simple transactions, records, million, size, metric. Okay. So throughput is a time generally, a time taken, turnaround time. So metric is how much time it is taken to insert and delete or update. And then this is the selection throughput. Throughput here mainly it is the time, measured time, turnaround time, TAT, TAT. We have to discuss more on OLAP is because that is our area of interest. That is where the most of the ETL packages happens. I told you, remember, we will load data into OLAP or a data warehouse only through ETL. Only through ETL. We will never manually or to an application insert data into OLAP. Only ETL will fetch data into OLAP. Or if we have to take, and if we again have to take data from OLAP to any other system, again ETL will come into picture. ETL controls OLAP, and that ETL will regularly run to fetch data from OLAP and load into OLAP. Okay. So you'll understand more of OLAP. Data warehouse. So to understand data warehouse, you have to understand first two things. To understand data warehouse, we have to understand these two things, measure and department. This two things I wrote it in non-technical terminology. In a technical terminology, to understand what a fact is and what a dimension is for an organization. So what is the measure? Measure is anything which is quantifiable. So quantifiable, like in an retail industry, so the measure is what? Measure is amount, money. So the sale transaction which happens, how much amount I have earned for each transaction, that is my fact. In a production organization, like a Harley Davidson car. So there, how many number of bikes produced? So that's my fact. So per day or per month, how many units of bikes are produced? That's fact. So fact is primarily a measure which is very key for my organization. That's where my knowledge tracking starts. So that's where my business decision taking begins. Okay, maybe through amount or maybe through volume or sometimes both. Both, like maybe a mobile manufacturer. How many mobiles I have? How many mobile sets are sold? What is the amount I earned? Both value and volume. So mainly measures are termed as facts in any in any database model. Okay. So first those are to be identified. Then the dimensions. These are little easiest things. The dimensions are mainly, you have to simplify them, they are the departments. Like if I have an organization, then there will be one finance department, then there will be one HR department, then there will be one sales department, customer department, employee department. Products department. So I'll have different departments. So for each of them I will have dimensions. So these dimensions will not record any facts, any sales, sale or a volume information. This will have only departmental information. Now to give more understanding of this, I will connect to one of the database which I have, one of the data warehouse database. Okay. AdventureWorks DW, data warehouse. So this is an OLAP database which is very elaborative so that I can demonstrate it. So as I told you, there will be two entities in an data warehouse model. One is a fact and the other is measure. So those things should be identified. So fact will be taken into fact tables and dimensions will be taken to dimension tables. So facts will start with fact and then dim will be starting with dim. So this is a data warehouse model. So you see limited number of tables. If it is to be a OLTP, so for example I have an OLTP database, SIS. So this is one of the organizations where they have an OLTP database. So you see you'll have enormous number of tables, but very simplified so that they support transactions, day in day out transactions. That is OLAP database. Okay. OLAP database and OLTP database may sit on same database server, or maybe on different database servers. So here in my scenario, both OLTP and OLAP are on the same server. This is my OLTP. This This is my OLAP. Both are on same server. Typically, they will be on different servers. Typically, in any organization, they will be on different servers. And there will be ETL packages which will read data from OLTP, maybe from one system or multiple systems, along with data from files or ERP, and then get that to OLAP. OLAP, which is at the center of system, center of organization. Okay. So I have an OLAP here. OLAP consists of dimensions and facts. I told you. So facts are the numerical values. So and then I have dimensions. So how? So I thought now then how we actually identify facts and then dimensions in an organizations, and then how we design them. Okay. So for that I will take one diagram, database diagram. I've already some. I'll add them and then demonstrate. Not getting anything now. So I have one table called fact internet sales. So what this table essentially has is all the sales which are happening through internet. So I have two mediums. So I have a superstore where I do sales both through online and through stores, local stores, physical stores, both. So now, but at the moment I am interested only on internet sales. Okay, you see, this is my typical fact. Okay, so this fact will be focusing only on sale data, only on sale data. If you see here, this will have so if you see in this fact, what is recorded? Unit price, amount, standard price, total cost, sale, how much amount the end user has paid, how much is tax of it, how much is flight charges of it, flight charges, courier, logistic charges, and then the date information. Okay, timeline information. So this is my typical fact. I am not interested in any other thing at this point. I am interested only in the numerical data. Saying that, I should be able to relate this to the departments also, right? So I should be able to relate it to what product is sold, to whom it is sold, by what means the amount is paid, what it is a promotion, what kind of promotion is applied. All that information should be tracked, right? Only then a fact will become meaningful. Else a fact will be only a numeric value. Only with a numeric value I can't make anything. I need associated dimensions too. So for that, what I will do is, what a fact does is, come to this diagram. Okay, so there is no key, product category key. This product category, product key. Okay. So you see, I have promotion, product, and customer. So if you see, everything related to promotion is recorded in this dimension. Everything related to a product, everything, its manufacturer, its quantity, its size, its color, its standard cost, catalog, everything will be recorded. Everything will be recorded in the table. Okay. Uh, Everything related to customer will be recorded in customer dimension. So these are no more tables, these are dimensions which has everything related. This is quite opposite to OLTP. Okay, so we establish dimensions first, and then so first dimensions comes. Okay, first we have to form dimensions. One for promotion, one for product, one for customer, or likewise one for currency types, one for geography, one for employees. Likewise, we'll have multiple dimensions for department where we club all the related information and put it in one dimension. Okay. Remember, while we are doing that, we don't insert any numerical facts. We will not consider any numerical facts into them, into dimensions. Okay. The thumb rule for dimension is we will have something into this which will very rarely change, like customer information. So more and more customers may come in, but customer name or customer language may not change very rapidly, right? Product information, new products may come, existing products may change very rarely. So something which will not really modify. That is what is your product dimension. On contrast to that, in fact is something which will keep growing daily, regularly. Okay, which will keep going, and something which will not change at all. So fact is something which will not change. For example, I do a transaction, I do a sale transaction of say 30,000. Okay, then that information is recorded into this fact table. Okay, I change my mind. Okay, maybe that POS has done a mistake. It is not actually the value is 30,000. It is actually 20,000. Will I go and update the fact to 20,000, the data transaction? No, no. In practical environment, in a practical scenario, that's not how the transaction happens. So what happens, now that a transaction is already done for 30K, and later on the cashier realized that it is of a 20K value, what they will do? They will do another transaction with a negative 10K. With a minus 10K. They will do another transaction. They will insert one more transaction. So the effective value, the net value is 30 minus 10 becomes 20. So that's how they do. They don't update. No updations ever happens on facts. Okay, only insertions. Update is happening, then there is some fraud happening. Okay. Then I have fact, and another important thing to be noted here is so I already told that first we develop dimensions, we load dimensions, and then we load fact. Okay, based on all this information, we insert keys, and then we insert values, the facts, actual facts. Okay, so you have to remember one thing here, that when we are loading keys, say for example, all this products information can be brought by product key. All this promotion, sorry, this product information. When you join these two tables with customer key, you can get for a fact, for a transaction value, the customer information. These keys which are generated are not as part of your OLTP keys. OLTP, online transactional processing, will also have its own keys and primary keys. Those are not these keys. These are called surrogate keys. these keys are as part of this dimension. So when records are inserted into these dimensions, then these keys are generated. Make a note of that. These are called surrogate keys. These are the keys which are in turn inserted into facts, and those keys are used to join this fact and dimensions and detailed data. So see the advantage. If I have to analyze my product-wise sales, I have like I have been selling like 3,000 variety of products in a superstore. Now I want to analyze products across last 4 quarters. Okay, so what all tables I have to use? At max, only 2 tables. I'm interested in online sales. Then online sales fact table and product table. If I join these two, I will get all product information, product name, color, category, everything, and then the sales happened for those corresponding products. So at max, in a typical OLTP, you may have only 2 level join. So that is the advantage of OLTP. And we have surrogate keys in fact table with which we can link dimension table. Okay. Actually, I told you that the fact is always a measure, always a numeric. But sometimes there can be a non-numeric fact. There can be. Those are called non-intrinsic facts. So facts are two types, intrinsic and non-intrinsic. Intrinsic is something which is quantifiable, which is numeric, and non-intrinsic, which is not numeric. Example, like you're taking survey for your different products. I told you you have 3,000 products. For all these products, you are going to customer and taking feedback. How they are performing, can these products or should be increase the supply, suggestions, feedbacks. So you're basically doing a customer survey for your different products. So different customers will give you different feedbacks. So all that should be stored. So what is that? That feedback. That is a fact again. That is not dimension. So that is fact. But that is a non-intrinsic fact, non-numeric fact. Okay, so your survey you will store into a fact. But your dimensions will not change. Okay, so dimensions, in dimensions there are nothing like intrinsic and non-intrinsic. Dimension is always departmental data, and which is non-numeric. But facts can be numeric and non-numeric. This typically in a data warehouse model, you will be seeing two kind of models, data warehouse models in a industry. After understanding the fact and the dimension difference between them, how they are created, what is their nature, how they should be retrieved, how they should be looked at, how they are positioned, what is the scope. After understanding all of this about fact and dimension, only then you will have a complete understanding of data warehouse. Only once you have complete understanding of data warehouse, you will be able to test your ETL solutions which load data into your data warehouse. Not only ETL solutions, for doing database testing also you need complete understanding of data warehouse. So a data warehouse is modeled in 2 ways. Star schema and snowflake schema. So in star schema, what happens is all the dimensions in your all the dimensions in a data warehouse model will be linked to a fact table directly. Like a fact table will be at the center and it will be surrounded by the dimensions. So every dimension in your data warehouse model, for example, in this diagram, if you see, I have 3 dimensions, and all of them are directly pointing to a fact. There could be more than one fact, but all the dimensions should be pointed to a fact. So that kind of model is called a star model, star schema. But sometimes what happens is you will run out of columns to store a product information, for example, any dimension information. So in this example, I have a dim product. I have so many columns to store the data, but again, I still ran out of the data to store. Sometimes ran out of column, or sometimes maybe logically I don't want to put that information in the same product. For example, I have data of all the products which I sell here on this primary dim product table. So for which I will have transactions, right? I also want to store the competitive products for my products. So the competitors who are selling same kind of products, that information I want to store in my data model. But I will not be selling them, no? So there will not be facts. So what I will do, I will create dimension separately and link that to my primary dimension. If you see in this example, dim dimension product is connected to subcategory and then dim category. I have 2 more dimensions. So means I have dimensions which are not directly pointing to a fact. So these dimensions, this typical data warehousing model is called Snowflake. Okay, so in Snowflake, it's not that it may so happen that all of my dimensions may not be pointing to a fact. There could be some dimensions which are pointing to another dimension. Which is a Snowflake schema. So this schema, data warehousing model, OLAP model, is a Snowflake model. Most of the organizations prefers this, but they will have multiple facts, multiple dimensions, and then they will realize. But it is suggested to have only one link from a dimension to a fact. For all the dimensions to the fact, only one link. Every dimension should be directly linked to the fact. Practically may not happen. We will have Snowflake schema. So that's with data warehousing, the data warehousing model. So in the data warehousing model, you will have dimensions and facts. Then you will to retrieve data quickly, efficiently, by consuming very less amount of time. Okay. Now you have complete understanding of data warehousing and then databases. Good. So the content which is planned for today's class is complete with this session.